So what are we doing here? We're here for 4 reasons. I'm going to go through each of them. So the first is we want an independent, bipartisan commission to investigate Trump-Russia. Okay. And when I say that, I think it's really important to talk not just about what that commission needs to investigate, but why it's needed. And just to be absolutely clear, this is common when there's a big scandal or problem. We don't just rely on a special counsel. And by the way, that's a victory that we got a special counsel, so yay! We don't just rely on a special counsel. We don't just rely on very important congressional committees. But traditionally, when there's an event like this, we need an independent, bipartisan commission. So think 9/11, think the Financial Crisis Inquiry Commission. The way it happens is Congress passes a law that creates this bipartisan commission. It's made up not of government officials, but of ordinary people who are experts. They're given subpoena power, and they interview witnesses. They hold public hearings that are televised. They publish thousands of pages of primary documents online for all of us and for researchers to see. And at the culmination of the investigation, they publish a report. This is a long-standing tradition, and it should continue. So we need that independent bipartisan commission now. We know where there's smoke, there's fire. We have known for many, many months that there was Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election. Period. That is a fact. Not fake news, that's a fact. We also know, and we've known, that there are many links between the Trump presidential campaign and Russia. This needs to be investigated by a bipartisan commission. So we're talking about, we know there's been interference. As Hillary Clinton said the other day, it's clear that there were Americans who helped the Russians who tapped into this data weaponize it. We need to find out the full story. And let's be clear, a special counsel's job is to investigate violations of law, including criminal violations. It's not Robert Mueller's job to look at the whole picture. We need the whole picture. Also, let's be clear, he could be fired at any time. We need a commission that can work on its own, that's independent of the political process. Okay, and let's talk about the congressional committees. I don't know about you, but they're not working fast enough for my taste. And we still have Nunes, who supposedly recused himself from the House Intelligence Committee, trying to stir up nonsense and divert the attention of the people because he's still chair of that committee. He's supposed to be recused from that investigation. We also have what promises to be a blockbuster testimony next Thursday with the former FBI director, James Comey, who was fired by the president. But what's going on behind the scenes? It's quite possible that the president is going to try to use some fake executive privilege to bar him from testifying. That's unacceptable. He already talked about their conversations, but could it work? Maybe. This is exactly why, alongside of the criminal investigation and alongside of the partisan, politically infused congressional committees, we need a truth committee. The March for Truth's #1 demand is the independent bipartisan commission. We need to win on this. We need to get this. We will get this. And if it requires flipping the Congress blue in 2018, we will do it. We will get it. Okay, that's one. The others are shorter, I promise. The second, or I always say that, but we'll see. The second is we want transparency of this commission. Just to reiterate, open hearings is the tradition that are televised, followed by a footnoted, publicly released report that is here for our nation's history. We have had the most bizarre things happen. We don't trust whether this is a legitimate president. We need to find out what exactly this president and his campaign did and why they did and what they're continuing to do to appease Russia. We're very suspicious, not just about the president, but his son-in-law Kushner. Kushner and Kremlin cannot get their story straight about these bank meetings, about these so-called back channels. It's not a back channel. When someone on the Trump campaign, when someone who is part of the Trump administration, when someone who's the president's son-in-law goes to a meeting in the president's private office, a private tower, and meets with the ambassador of Russia to try to come up with a way to go into the Russian embassy, to use Russian embassy equipment to communicate with Moscow, that's not a back channel. That sounds like treason to me. Okay, we're on 3. Come on, you know I've got to say this. Follow the money. We want Trump's tax returns. We want them yesterday. We want them now. Congress has the power to get those tax returns released. As you know, sorry guys. I'm just going to keep talking. Is that okay? Okay. So, we want Trump's tax returns. You know, back during the Watergate era, Congress used a 1924 law to get access to Nixon's tax returns. Let me be clear with you. That was just months before he resigned. And you know what? Do you know what Congress found out when they actually got a hold of Nixon's tax returns? He owed back taxes and had to settle with the IRS for nearly $500,000. This was just a few months later, in the wake of the Watergate scandal, Nixon resigned. Now, I'll be back to Nixon in a moment, I promise, before I wrap things up. Our fourth thing that is a demand for the March for Truth is that we want crimes to be prosecuted. People will go to jail. Just like Watergate, we need to see people who commit federal crimes go to jail.
Lock them up.
Lock them up. Lock them up. Lock them up. Lock them up. So as someone who teaches white-collar crime, I'm well familiar with the statutes, including 18 U.S.C. 1503. I'm sorry to bore you, and its omnibus provision that would prohibit some of the behavior we have looked at. Let's look at this very clearly. Remember that the first article of impeachment for Richard Nixon included obstruction of justice. It's very clear to experts both in white-collar crime and constitutional law that there's more than smoke here. There's fire. When the president asked others to leave the room so he could be alone with Jim Comey, and then he said to Comey that he wanted him, this is the FBI director, to drop the investigation of Flynn. Then the president fires him, and then the president goes on national television admitting that the excuses were pretextual, and he only fired him because of the Russia investigation. But there's more. And in a closed-door, press-excluded meeting with the Russian ambassador and visitor, he called Comey a nut job. I'm serious, right? You know this. And said the pressure would be off of him about Russia now that Comey was gone. People, obstruction of justice. So the thing about crime, though, there's a big debate as to whether a sitting president can be indicted for criminal behavior committed while he was in office. And the thing is, there may be a question about whether the indictment can happen or whether the prosecution can happen, whether those are two different things. That doesn't matter. There are others who were involved in this obstruction, and meanwhile, there is a mechanism called impeachment.